Okay, so Ecclesiastes, we're going to start with this. And what would be the theme song for this? Actually, the theme song would probably be sung by the Rolling Stones. And you're like saying, well, I say sometimes the heathen speak truth, and Ecclesiastes is the book of I can't get no satisfaction. Though I try, and I try, and I try, and I try, I can't get no satisfaction. That's really what the book is about. And it starts that way. It says, this is the words of the preacher, the son of David, who is king in Jerusalem. The word Ecclesiastes comes from a word called Koheleth, and it means the preacher, or one who calls an assembly and discusses a topic. So Solomon decided he was going to speak about the vanity of life for this season. So, okay, all right. So the vanity of life. He's going to speak about the vanity of life and the emptiness. And so the theme is the search for the meaning and satisfaction. So that's the theme of the book. And you find throughout this, until you get to the last chapter, Solomon is really saying what that rock and roll song said. Solomon was really saying that you can't get any satisfaction, to put it in the grammatically correct form. You can't get any satisfaction by operating in the natural realm. So fulfillment is found, that's what we read, the final conclusion that comes out of all this is that the fulfillment is really only found in words that come from the great shepherd. And so throughout this, it's kind of interesting the way the Bible is designed in terms of the order of the books, because we do find out, like, God understands that we are going to have like a big question when we suffer, like, why is this happening to me? So he gives us Job in the books of wisdom first. Why is this happening to me? That answers a big significant question. And it also answers the question, is God there? Does he hear? And I think if you read Job carefully and with an open heart, you understand that, yes, God is there. He doesn't necessarily give you a satisfying answer for your natural mind as to why suffering is happening, but it does open the idea and it does express to us that there is God, there is an enemy, and there is a relationship. And so that happens in Job. The next thing in Psalms, God teaches us how to talk to him, and he gives some guidelines for expressing joy, anger, frustration, questions, more questions, and just stories, history, that kind of thing. And then Proverbs gives us the idea of right action. So now we get to this, it's really, when you read through this book, you kind of, you wonder why it became a part of the Jewish library of inspired reading, inspired literature. Like, you're reading through this, and it's like you're wondering, when does it get to the point? Because throughout it, it's the second verse here. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. All is empty. So the historic purpose of this book is it's on the true philosophy of life. What is my true philosophy? Can I work my way through something and find a true philosophy, a true logic for my mind, a true logic, a true philosophy? Can I love the right kind of knowledge? And there's no true happiness found in what the world has to offer. That's the conclusion. So it takes a while to get there, but it's kind of interesting how many chapters that the Lord lets Solomon spill out, what he's saying about life and the life the life as it is on this earth. All right, so in Ecclesiastes, we do find Christ. It happens. It happens. And we find that he is the high. If we don't have Christ to go with, if we don't have the message of Christ, if we don't have the message of the Gospels and the message of the New Testament, then reading Ecclesiastes is going to be a very frustrating experience. So if you're wondering why, if you have some Jewish friends and you're wondering why, Jewish friends who do not believe in Jesus, if you're wondering why they can be cynical and frustrated, why a lot of them seem to go into journalism, it's true, they go into journalism. When I was working in the newspaper, just about 70% of the newspaper were Jewish people, and they were searching for truth. They were like looking for answers. And I think that part of it is because they were so rooted in this wisdom that had filtered in from the days of Solomon. Because in the high days of Solomon, in the peaceful days of Solomon, in the prosperous days of Solomon, this is when the libraries were assembled. People had time for books. They weren't running for their lives. They weren't fighting enemies. There wasn't plagues. God was really blessing the nation. People were coming from all over the world, bringing everything to Israel in order to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And Solomon was expounding on many things he was talking about. Like so much, Solomon was his own World Wide Web. It's like just Google something in Solomon's mind, he had an answer. Because God had given him all of the knowledge, all of the natural knowledge that could be in the presence of anybody at that person. So people brought gifts to think about that. But that mind and that understanding and that kind of view of the world, and I think the Jewish view of the world and the way they operate their country right now of Israel, it's rooted in this, in some of this. Like they are still waiting to reach the latter chapters to find the great shepherd, to listen to what he has to say. And until they put Christ with all of the information they have about life, all of it very good, all of it very right, the entire legal systems that are existing on the planet today, all of them have their roots in the codes that are delivered from God to Moses. All of them have that. They can talk about everything else, inventing their own kind of law, but it didn't. All of the laws around the world, even Sharia law, all of that law is all rooted in the idea of justice and judgment that comes from God through the books of Moses. But without Jesus Christ, to be placed in the midst of this information, none of it makes sense. So Jesus is the highest good. He is the ultimate fulfillment. This singer says, I can't get no satisfaction, and Jesus Christ is saying, I am the fullness of all that you are looking for. I am the fullness, because Jesus takes it to a different level. Satisfaction is momentary, it's partial, and it's fleeting. But fulfillment is that sense of wholeness that God wants to put. That, He has set eternity. That's what Ecclesiastes says. Eternity has been set in everyone's heart. There's a place for God in every person on the planet, and only God can fill that. Whatever you paper over there, whatever you shovel into that, however you try to hide that, whether it's climbing the highest mountain or going to the lowest depths of the sea in some sort of submersible, whether it's trying to raise the Titanic or trying to find the missing link, all of that is just papering over that hole in the heart, that place that God has made for himself. It's not going to be fulfilled. Only Christ fulfills that. He's the one shepherd, the true wisdom. All the wisdom that Solomon had was awesome, but the true wisdom, without putting that with Christ, it doesn't really add up. It's an open-ended equation. This equals, and that's what Solomon's saying in the first part of this. This, and where's the answer? Where's the sum? I added this together and nothing. But then if you add this, and this, and say Christ, then all of it comes together and makes sense. Christ is also the water of life that quenches our thirst for happiness. And then he is the wisdom of God that fulfills all the desire that we have for knowledge. Okay, so there's some key words that appear in this. Vanity is one of them. You met that word already. Vanity, it means futility, uselessness, nothingness. It is noted, though, that this is usually used in connection with the phrase under the sun. That's another one. What does it profit a man from all his labor which he toils under the sun? Vanity of vanities under the sun. That's significant. We need to put those together. And you'll see later on. Vexation. This is another word that we see throughout here. Vexation. Striving after the wind. It's like you're chasing something that you can't grasp. You can't get a hold of it. Where is it? It says it several times, twice here in the first one. I've seen all the works that are done under the sun. Indeed, all is vanity and vexation, a grasping for the wind. Vanity and vexation. In the New King James, it says vexation. In the Old King James, it says vexation of spirit. All is vanity and vexation of spirit. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, verse 17, and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is vexation of spirit. So this striving after the wind, this endless pursuit of something that will make me. Well, Solomon, it's like you've talked to God. It's like you've talked to God twice. He's visited you. And the wisdom that you have is because God visited you. And so this is a man that's like spun out. You know, he was on the right way, but he's spun out. And he's trying to get back onto the narrow way. He's pitched himself into the ditch with his pursuits. So 29 times here we see this word under the sun, this phrase. 35 times we get this in 27 verses. 35 times we get the idea of vanity, the word vanity. Vanity of vanity, says the teacher, all is vanity. It's like you're holding a grant. What does this all mean? What does this all mean? This is what Solomon, he's sitting down by the water, he's letting the sand run through his fingers, sands through the hourglass of time, so are the days of our lives. And that's what he's doing. He's like looking, like trying to figure out what is going to happen, what can I do to find what I need? Okay, so nothing in this world. So the problem is first stated in this exposition. The problem is first stated, nothing in this world really brings real satisfaction, real fulfillment. And so he starts that, all is vanity, what profit has a man from all of his labor which he toils under the sun? What is there? What's the purpose for living? What's the meaning of life? It's like, these are big questions. And Solomon had the time. It's like not a lot of people have the time. Solomon had a lot of time on his hands. A lot of women in his life, a lot of time on his hands. And he was, pondering these things, these great things, trying to figure out, trying to write them down, trying to dictate them, get them down on paper for someone to understand. But, it's, throughout this book, you're going to see another couple of words like nails and goads. And that'll happen like at a certain point in this book, he realizes that there are some fundamental things that really hold me together. That really hold my life together. Like he comes to he reasons out all this stuff. He spills out all of his words on emptiness, and then at the end when he reaches the end of his exposition on emptiness, then he realizes there are some things that hold me together. There are some goads, there are some nails in here. There are some fasteners that hold my life together. And so there are wise sayings that happen and prod him for thinking, and there is some stability that he can bring to the thing that he's teaching here. But the thing is, the thing that he's saying, generations come, the sun rises, the sun sets, day after day, the wind, the water cycles, all these things are constantly repeated. And man can never really be satisfied with what he sees and hears on earth. And even while he thinks, so there is nothing new under the sun. All of the things that are happening are just perpetual. So it's kind of interesting when we go to this next. There it is, the sandwich of satisfaction. So you can see this. And he goes through this. He starts in verse 1 through verse 11. He goes through all of these things. Like these are the things that he tried. It said, I said in my heart, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this was vanity. I said of laughter, what does it accomplish? I searched my heart to gratify with flesh and wine, guiding my heart with wisdom, how to lay hold on folly, that I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their life. I made my works great. I built my houses. I planted vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards. I planted all kinds of trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants, had servants born in my house. Yea, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered myself silver and gold and the special treasures of the kings and of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the lights of the sons of men, the musical instruments of all kind. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My wisdom reigned with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Then I looked on all the works of my hands and on the labor which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and vexation of spirit, or grasping for the wind. No profit under the sun. So this is his sandwich. He's like piling on the lunch meat, or whatever. He's just piling on amusement. Like, I need a good comedian. If I have a good comedian, maybe I'll find satisfaction. If I complete the right kind of project, maybe I'll find satisfaction. If I build something, if I get as much as I can, if I have a whole warehouse full of cars, like Jay Leno or Shaquille O'Neal or Reggie Jackson, they have like whole warehouses of cars, they sit there. Collections, those kind of things, collections, entertainment, fame, all of this. But everything, the top slice is vanity, the bottom slice is vanity, and everything in between is just empty. It's like I said, it's like cold cuts. Tastes good, but not quite sure the nutritional value of them sometimes. But, a good Italian cold cut is a good Italian cold cut. And it's to be enjoyed, and it does bring maybe an hour and a half of satisfaction, unless you get heartburn. But there's the sandwich of satisfaction. He's trying, he's piling it on thick. He's trying, he's really trying to figure out. He's just putting it out there for you. And so, so he starts with his search. That's the thing, the search in the realm of experience. So no one really had, the resources mentally, politically, economically to research this question the way that Solomon did. No one else had either, the kind of resources he had, and everything, and the political power he had, and everything that was going on in his life. Oh, I'm sorry, went backwards. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so the searching for an experience. So thought in thinking, in humor, in wine, in great works, in possession, music and arts. If I just have a good symphony, that would be really awesome. If I just would hear a good symphony. Adolf Hitler used to love to listen to Wagner. It's like if I can just hear just a grand theme about the German people and the way they take over everything, that'd be really awesome. I'd be satisfied. In world recognition, worldly pleasures, all of these things Solomon gave himself to. So he did a little, it was I'm going to experiment. I'm just going to experiment and see what I can find. It's it's really, it's kind of it's not interesting. It's sad, really. It's sad because, the thing that Solomon lost and when he was going through these pursuits was the idea of mission, the idea of Israel's mission to the world. And Solomon prayed the prayer that if other peoples in other places would pray to the temple, that God would hear them. He understood it at that point in his life when he finished the temple and he prayed for its consecration. He saw the presence of God fill it. He understood that. But somewhere after that, somewhere between that and the end of his life, he recognized that, he recognized that the things are falling, that emptiness, things are falling apart. All right, so searching of philosophy. So in chapter 5 through 8, well, there's a famous, let's see, where are we? If we go to 3, he talks about, he gives this great exposition on the seasons of time. To everything there is a time, there is a season. This was also turned into a top 10, I think a number 1 hit by a group called The Byrds. Had a wild guitar player named Roger McGuinn. That's for the guitar players in the class. So 8 Miles High, you should listen to it. Every guitar player should listen to it once. But anyway, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted. This is chapter 3. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And this is really, he's just really making, that seems like very poetic, but it's really, it's just expressing his vanity. It says, well, sometimes this happens, sometimes that happens. Things go up, things go down, things go up, things go down, things go up. People die, people mourn, people dance, people kill, people make alive. This is the way it is. Yes?
So, he talks about throwing a stone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, verse 5. Is that just arbitrarily in there, or does that have a deeper meaning?
Well, that's really a time to cast away stones or a time to gather stones.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to the Mosaic Law. There's a time to give mercy and there's a time to judge, is what he's saying. So if you cast away stones, you're giving mercy. If you're gathering stones, it's judgment. So you could read that it's a time to render judgment. It's a time to cast away judgment, to have mercy, rejoice over judgment, or it's a time to judge. So that's what that means. That's, if you know that back in there, if the man who was gathering sticks on the Sabbath in Exodus or Numbers, he was stoned. And there could be a time. There were other times. Jesus would come and say, "This is a time to cast away the stone." When the woman in adultery was coming, that was a time to cast away the stone, and the men cast away the stone. So you'll find that. I could give you just a little. You find that a lot of answers to some difficult situations are answered by an understanding from another part of the Bible. Like the religious writers, knew the other parts of the Bible and they wrote about it. So you can find some, like there's a verse in Proverbs that talk about scorners setting the city on fire. So you're thinking why wouldn't, God, Sodom and Gomorrah, what really caused God to send fire from heaven? Really the scorning. The sensual sin that was present there was one thing, but then the scorning of God, the scorning of the message of God was the real thing that brought the fire down. Their greatest sin was really not the physical pursuit of pleasure that they were having, but the fact that they scorned the message that they had heard, as small as it was from the voice of Lot. And we know that Lot was not any great believer either. He was a believer, but he wasn't a great one. So, okay. So the next thing, the power to enjoy riches, Solomon comes to the conclusion in chapter 5, is God-given. Here it says, it's God-given. God gives the power to enjoy riches, and he starts talking about this. And then there in chapter goes through this, let's see. All right, here it is. Where's the conclusion to this? Here it is. For who knows what is good for man in life, all the days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow. Who can tell a man what will happen to him after the sun? This is the rhetorical question that he's ending with in chapter 6, verse 12. He's saying, there's only, the answer has to be the answer has to be something beyond the sun. You have to look for an answer under the sun. The answer is not satisfactory, but we have to look beyond these things. All of these, the power to enjoy riches is really something that only God gives. Verse 1 of chapter 6, there is an evil which I've seen under the sun. It's common among men, a man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor so that he lacks nothing for himself of all his desires. Yet God does not give him power to eat of it, but a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity, and it's an evil affliction. So sometimes people get stuff and they don't get to enjoy it. So the power to enjoy riches, the grace to enjoy it, is really from God. Now, the poor wise man story in chapter 9 is a great story. It says, I have seen wisdom under the sun. There was a little city with a few men in it. Verse 13, verse 14. And a great king came against it, besieged it, and built great snares around it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and by his wisdom he delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that same poor man. Then he said, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and all his words are not heard. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard, rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. One sinner destroys much good. Now he's starting to come to some conclusions here as he gets through his writing here. He's coming to the idea that that there is a wisdom, but the wisdom is maybe not seen always. Like poor little wise men speak speak small things that we should listen to. But the tendency is, even if they have a successful outcome, even in a city, like in this sense, the city is besieged, a king is going to destroy it, a little wise man figures out a way out of the situation, but when the wise man is gone, he is forgotten. Earlier in this, I saw under the sun, verse 11, earlier in chapter 9, I saw in this under the sun that the race is not to the swift, the battle is not to the strong, the bread doesn't go to the wise all the time, riches do not always go to the smartest people, the men of understanding, favor is not always to the skillful, and time and chance happen to everyone. For man does not know his time. Like fish taken in a cruel net, like birds caught in a snare, the sons of men are snared in an evil time when it falls suddenly unto them. And then he goes into this. He's starting to, I think of it this way when I read this, that Solomon is saying all these things. God is letting him say all these things. He's said that, God has set eternity in his heart. So there are some smart things that are coming. There are some valuable things that are coming in these first chapters. But when he gets to this, when he starts to work this out in chapter 9, Solomon starts to see that life is basically, as the standard of fairness goes, it doesn't really seem to work out. It would seem that the swift should win every race, but it doesn't happen that way. And then the swift, and sometimes the swift win the race, and you find out years later that performance-enhancing drugs were the reason that they won the race, And where is the fairness in that? And the battle, we would think that the battle is to the strong, but the strong don't always win all the battles. So our understandings, our conclusions that we come, the sense of human fairness that we have is really always challenged every day. We wonder why, bad things happen to seemingly good people, and whose standard are we using to calculate that? That's just so tragic. That's tragic that's the football player that was driving, and then the guy that was sitting in the passenger seat gets killed, and the guy who was driving stone cold drunk is alive. It's and we look at that and we wonder about that, and then his team wins the game the next day. And we're left to wonder okay, guy driving drunk, he killed a guy, And then it seems like his team got blessed because of his alcoholism. You know, you see, like, you run those things through your mind, and it's like, and Solomon is running all these things through his mind, writing them all down, like, why doesn't the race go to the swift all the time? Why don't the strong win every battle? Why don't the smart people always figure out how to make the best inventions and make all the money? Why does, years ago when the Apple computers first came out, no one wanted them. It's like no one wanted them. And then Microsoft came into being, and it was like, anyone who used an Apple knew that Apple was like very easy to use, very user-friendly, and then it can't be really good, if dumb people can use it, as opposed to what, dumb people, even dumb people can use it, It's one thing if you got something that stupid people figure out to use, but if dumb people can use something, they can't be very good, And then all of a sudden we had this whole wave that, the PC and Microsoft and everything is like really the way to go, made one guy a lot of money, and no one bought Apples at all, except for like, strange people, artistic people. And then something changed. Something was invented, and iPod changed, and next thing you know, all of a sudden everyone was finding, oh wow, Apple's got cool stuff, look at that. And everything is like now switched. And it's kind of interesting. Why does that? But here he's saying like wisdom. Who was the small guy talking in the wisdom? This guy was always talking about the great, how to do things this way, but no one was listening. And then, and they kept forgetting. The little wise man said a lot of things, but those things were ignored. But here's one of the first great statements in this, one of the great statements. Words of the wise should be heard rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than the weapons of war. Wisdom is always better than the weapons of war. But one sinner destroys much good. That's like a major proverb. Wisdom is better than the weapons of war, but if you have wisdom and the weapons of war in the wrong person's hands, he can destroy much good. And we've seen that also throughout history. Now, let's see, where do we go in here? Right. Okay. So we should esteem wisdom. So we have, he has that search. He searches in all of the realms of experience. From this part, he's searching in the realms of philosophy. He's looking for the right conclusion. So he comes to this conclusion. Have a great time while you're young. Remove vanity from your life. Remember your Creator and recognize that judgment is coming. That's what his real conclusion is, and it starts to happen. The reason he says that is we start to see this in the end of this writing, in the end of the book, in chapter 12. Chapter 12, things start to come together. So Solomon has gone on this natural adventure of knowledge. He's been leaning upon his own understanding. There's been a failure to acknowledge God in all of his ways. And he had really, these are the problem with the searches that were happening. There was a failure to let wisdom direct his paths in these things. That's why, when he was going through all the getting of everything, that didn't happen. When he was going through all of the thinking and analyzing the way, don't be rash with your mouth, let not your heart utter anything hastily, for God is in heaven and you are on earth, let your words be few. Like he's going through all of these philosophies and wondering how he can apply them to life. It's not really working out for him either. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. Isn't that verse 5:11? That's for all of you who may have been thinking of playing the lottery. When goods increase, they also increase who eat them. So what profit have the owners except to see them with their eyes? That's a good thing. Like, just be careful. When you get a lot of money, all of a sudden there's a lot of people who want to eat at your table. And all you see, like you see your money, but you don't really get to enjoy it. Yes? This is chapter 5:11. I'm going through some of the things that, the first part he talks about. In chapter 2, his searches begin with all of these. analyzes all these things that he collected and everything, but then he starts going through the philosophies, different philosophies that he's tried. And this is one, he's come to these kind of conclusions. He's just, his pursuits have brought out certain pieces of wisdom that we should, take to heart. And that's what he's listing those things here for us. The search that he has is a natural adventure, and he's leaning upon his own understanding, and he doesn't acknowledge God in all his ways, and he's not letting wisdom direct his path. He's going through this, but this is all being written down for us to understand, to watch. Has anyone really thought the way? Has anyone really been the way that I've gone in terms of my thinking patterns? And the answer is yes. Solomon went through this whole cycle trying to figure out where are the answers. Are the answers in this? Are the answers in that? So he has the search in the realm of philosophy, the poor wise man. Even if you are a great philosopher, the chances of people listening to you and remembering what you say are very small. So don't pursue these things. So rejoice in your youth, remove vanity from your life, and remember that your Creator, and recognize that judgment is coming. Now, when he gets to chapter 12, some things, he starts to say some things. Remember why does, let's see, where is this? Okay, here it is. Okay, starts in verse 3. Why should you rejoice in your youth? Because your body is falling apart. That's basically, body is falling. He starts to describe how your body falls apart. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them, while the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are not darkened and the clouds do not return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, that's your arms start to weaken. This is like poetic picture, like the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men bow down. Your arms are weak and your legs can't hold you up. When the grinders cease because they are few. What are those? The grinders. Your teeth. Your teeth start falling out of your head. You can't pick stuff up, you can't stand up, and you don't have too many teeth in your mouth anymore. That's the next thing. The doors are shut in the street. Your ears, right there, your ears cannot, where does it say that? And those that look through the windows grow dim. Your eyes, I have 20/20 vision. That's what my doctor tells me. I do have 20/20 vision. It's inside 20 feet that it's blurry. It's so you need these. Your arms aren't long enough to hold out things that you can read anymore. I either have 20/20 vision or short arms, one or the other. So we put these on. Your windows grow dim when the doors are shut in the streets, and when the sound of grinding is low, when one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of music are brought low. It's you can't enjoy a good song anymore. You can't enjoy a good song anymore because your hearing is going. The daughters sing, but when they hit those high notes, they just don't register anymore. That's something. And when you're the sound of a bird, you're frightened by everything. What you do here scares you. This is where you're going. Solomon, all the wisdom in the world, all the women, all the wealthy, and this is what he's reduced to. My arms don't work. I can't stand. I can't taste anything. I think that gets to, he gets that, where is it? All the daughters of music are brought low. They are afraid of height. I fear I'm going to fall down. The almond tree blossoms. My old age is setting in. And the grasshopper is a burden. I'm bowed down like an insect, and my desire fails. So my desire fails. I don't have anything. I wrote Song of Solomon, but all of those pictures in there, there's nothing left inside of me right now at this time. So obviously this is written later in life after that. And the grasshopper is a burden and desire fails. Man goes to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the street. Remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed or the golden bowl is broken. The picture is sad. So she's starting to multiply all these figures of death. And that's where, but when we get to this, now we get to this, where is it? Verse 7, the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Now he comes to this. He's worked his way through all of this, all of these pictures, all of his searches are over now. He's gone through the searches of possessions and experience. He's gone through the searches of philosophy. And now he comes to a sense of fulfillment. And he says one last time, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yes, he pondered and sought and set in order many proverbs, and the preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are goads, and the words of scholars are like well-driven nails given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books there is no end. Much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us get to the conclusion of the whole matter. So all of that searching, all of that explanation, all of that philosophy, all of the spilling of his natural mind, he says, I could write a lot of books and you could get worn out reading them, but let's get to the conclusion of everything. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is man's all. That's what it says in the New King James. In the Old King James, it says, let us hear this. Where is it? Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole of man. And it's the whole of man, the integer of man. Integer is a number that can't be broken into pieces. It can't be divided anymore. This is the whole of man. Fear God and keep his commandments. And this is man's all. God will bring every work to judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So this is the conclusion that he comes to, the fear of the Lord. He knew this, and maybe he got away from it. And he explained that you're probably going to go on a lot of sentimental or psychological or philosophical, emotional journeys. You're going to take all of these kind of journeys because I took them. But when you get all the way through them, you're going to come to this conclusion that the fear of the Lord and the keeping of his commandments is the only way to live. This is man's wholeness. This is the way man can be whole. Fear of the Lord, it's the beginning of wisdom. So vanity is a life unyielded to God. And what does it lead to? This, the distorted view of the universe, a misconception of God, religion of fear, fatalism, like we see the fatalistic way there. Like, why should I, the race doesn't always go to the swift. I shouldn't try to be fast, all those things. Cynical indifference, a false earnestness, and then hopeless pessimism. Like all these kinds of things can happen in a person's life. But there's one thing that we notice throughout this, is like this book is really, and the reason it's great that it comes before Song of Solomon, this book really ignores a major principle of life, and that's relationship. Like Yahweh, Ecclesiastes does not refer to God as Yahweh. And we know that that's the name that God gave for himself to Moses. And grace and relationship, the God who is and the God who draws near. Elohim, all through this book, Solomon uses the word Elohim. God is mighty, God is the mechanic of the universe, all of that is going on. But the idea of a relationship is so you have a whole book here where the relationship with God and the pursuit of other things. So the missing relationship is the issue, really, when you come to the conclusion of the matter. So when you read all through the book and you find out that he hasn't used the word Yahweh, when he doesn't know God as I am, he only knows God as this larger creator kind of being, not a personal relationship. And this book here is in the Bible to show us that these kind of thoughts and these kinds of searches are not it's God is there with you in that and ready to receive you back to himself when that. So we can see how this is just like how it goes. You can look at that, the analysis and then the solution. Its secular theme is really high at the beginning, But then the focus at the end turns to the solutions. Under the sun, vanity. So the solution, this is the solution. Fulfillment is only where? It's beyond the sun. The fulfillment is beyond the sun. Our fulfillment, it comes from the chief shepherd. True wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, and God has set eternity in a man's heart. Nothing in this temporal world can bring the fulfillment. Solomon tried it. Solomon tried it all, and he gave us this explanation so that we would find these conclusions and these solutions. And then the next book in the Bible, he talks about really find true love. True love is like the most amazing thing in the world. So Ecclesiastes is the pursuit of all the things outside of the relationship with God and the relationships with people. And then true love is found in finding the right person. All right, so what do we need to know? All right, so we need to know this, that conviction will affect our character through conduct. And so if we dethrone God, like if we remove God from the throne here, we lose the key to life. So enjoyment without God is entertainment, but it's not enrichment. It doesn't really add anything to your life. You can have moments of satisfaction. Great movie, yeah. Spent $17 on popcorn. About that, right? I'm not that, it's close to it, right? Used to be, movie's about a $50 date now, right? If you take somebody to the movies, guys, right? If you're paying, maybe you're not paying anymore. Maybe that passé. You're like, all right, I'm not going there, sorry. That's for the next part. All right. All right, if you conduct yourself, if your conduct is untrue to the conviction that you have in your heart, destruction. Like the goads that God puts in your heart that you have learned, you're untrue to that, then there's destruction. But conduct guided by conviction, what does it mean? It's constructive. It builds something in you. So convictions help us and they feed our actions. And then if we live a life guided by the convictions that God pounds into us, and I do, because some things really are pounded into us because we are hard. God really has to pound things into us. Gently drives things, but sometimes he pounds home some real truths for us. What do we need to do? Be disciplined in character through a conduct of obedience. So, Solomon was told the way that he was to go, and he went these ways. And then God let him record his observations for us to see so that we wouldn't go this way. So that we would read through and come to this and say, oh, if I fear God, I don't really have to go through all of this. I really don't have to, enthrone God. That's what we need to do. What we need to do is enthrone God in our thoughts and actions. And why do we need to do this? Because only in his presence, Psalm 16:11, is there fullness of joy. And this is life eternal, John 17:3, that they might know the only true God and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. Those are the answers. So why do we need to be disciplined in character through this conduct of obedience and enthrone God? Is because in his presence is the fullness of joy. And there you go, the conclusion of the matter. Whatever way you're going to take, down Swamp Road or down Savannah Highway, whatever road you're going to take, the conclusion of the matter is fear God and keep his commandments, for this is your wholeness of life. All right? Okay, so you got 10 minutes to take a break. Come on back for Song of Solomon, and then we'll be done for our semester. Okay? All right, thank you.